Greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to reading Sun Tzu's Art of War. I'm Clifford Bates, and we are now today doing chapter 10 out of the 13 chapters of Sun Tzu's Art of War. We are using the Milford Translation, um, and I have still not yet put a general thing up about Sun Tzu that I promised people I would do. Every time I do, I look things. And I've been, as I've been doing this, I've been looking again at Chinese and thinking, maybe I should have talked about each line. Oh, maybe I should go over and do this all over again and pay attention to lines. Because usually what's a good signature of an independent line using the Mulford is that he begins at the new end. When it's at the new end there, it suggests that it is a new line and that everything in there from that point is kind of like a um, the in that stanza of text. Um, I'm almost tempted to kind of show you guys the Chinese, get you freaked out a little bit. Maybe I'll do a separate video. This is the Chinese. This is how it looks, and this is why it is the way it is. But we're going today. We're going to finish chapter. We're going to go to chapter 10. I'll keep my copy here. It's like maybe sometimes reading it here, I see something funny. Um, Again, he starts out with the thing as Master Sun says. It's always this is the indication that there is this. There is this. And the only time there was kind of an additional thing was the 2 chapters ago when, in the fray, I think, when all of a sudden there was the Master Military Primer. Yeah, the military primer. Usually, Master Sun says will be the begin only once, but then in there's it is halfway through you get that military primer in the fray in chapter 7. Chapter 7 is the middle chapter. So now, and we could say maybe that's how it divides, and that's the two divisions. But then it's not the middle. It becomes therefore that one chapter becomes two, with the military primer being the beginning of this and there. But you see, this has always been the problem with this book. This book is kind of like all Chinese Zen things. It's kind of like abstract, and its form. In other words, this is the whole thing about it's chaos, but then there's order to it. Your mind has to look at the things and looking at the thing, looking at the way the thing looks strangely odd and patterns emerge, and discern the patterns. Okay, and therefore that's where the teaching is. This is how to understand what he's trying to teach you. And in fact, this is the way, in a way, what he's doing is trying to teach you to see the order in chaos, and therefore master having your mind. The mind needs to be able to. The leader's mind needs to be looking, always stay calm, always keep discipline, but it also has to be able to understand that in chaos there can be patterns, there can be order, and that you have to discern information from it that you're going to have to utilize. Remember, you always need to look for the advantage for yourself. What is the benefit? How can you get it? What is the weakness that I can take advantage of? What is this as strong as it appears, or is it as weak as it appears? What is the reality of what I'm looking at? Is it real? Is it there? What is there in order? Is there lack of order? Are these things I'm watching real, or are they fake, and to lead me to believing one thing and falling into a trap? Is this gain a real gain? Is this opportunity or advantage a real advantage, or is this a trap that is to lure me in? And all these things you have to constantly think about, and Sun Tzu wants to get us thinking about this. But today we're going to be focusing on the forms of terrain, the land, and we have this beginning point. I think there's no, sorry. Um, um, Master Sung Sun, there are different forms of terrain: accessible terrain, entangling terrain, deadlock terrain, enclosed terrain, precipitous terrain, and distant terrain. So therefore, there's six, right? And then he starts defining them. Okay, so this is the different types of terrain. There's six, Accessible means both sides can come and go freely. Period. Unaccessible. Okay, make sure this is. I always have to be careful because the Google Books version, do like any ebook, tends to have problems with spacing and things that should be um, things that be should be accessible to advantage. Yeah, this is all right. Accessible means that both sides can come and go. He who is on assembled terrain, no, he can free go. Both sides can come and go on accessible terrain. He who occupies the yang ground and ensures his line of supplies will fight to his advantage. So therefore, if you yang is high, yin is low, right? Then therefore you should always take high versus low. Remember I said it earlier. High is advantageous, shun the low. Therefore, you occupy the yang ground, the advantageous ground, the higher ground. Just ensure that your lines of supply, you ensure your line of supplies are intact or work. And if you fight on this situation, it'll be to your advantage. If you don't have the high ground, you have the yang, and or your supplies are not your line to your supplies are not secure or safe or things, then you won't fight to your advantage. Okay, that's remember everything he says here. There's an opposite case implied into it. Entangling means advance is possible, but withdraw is hard. So if accessible means come and go easy, entanglement means you can go in, but getting out. Entangle means it's like a trap. On entangled terrain, if the enemy is unprepared, go out and defeat him. So if he's unprepared in entangled terrain, go in there and defeat him. But if he's prepared or if our move fails, it will be hard to retreat. The outcome will not be to our advantage. In other words, it's not advantageous for us. We shouldn't attack. We should only attack if he is really unprepared. If you catch him wholly by surprise, then defeat him. But if he, in other words, but let's say that's a trap. He's not unprepared. He's prepared. The danger is that once you get in there, you can't retreat. Or it's very difficult to retreat, and therefore this would not be an advantage. So you have to make sure either go in there and defeat him, but you have to make very sure you can know you defeat them. In other words, you have to have the millstone to the egg advantage. You only know, in other words, you should only be confident about the defeat that you're going to go into. You're going to be able to defeat them if you are clearly the millstone and they're the egg. If you're not sure they're the egg, then maybe you're going to bump into another millstone. And once you're in there, what happens? If your attack does not succeed and they're not destroyed, you start fighting. You can't, and he gets the advantage of you. You can't withdraw. It will not be to your advantage. Okay, that's why entangling terrain is you only attack if you're sure the other side is defenseless. If they're prepared, don't bother. Don't attack. It's not smart, not advantageous. Okay, deadlock terrain. So that's the third, right? Third of the six means neither side finds it advantageous to make a move. So deadlock terrain is that the terrain is so that neither side gets an advantage for it. Neither side will make anyone makes a move. It's not. It's this. There's no advantageousness to anyone's moving in there. One side or another side, it's going to just wash out. Deadlock terrain is not one that will allow the position. The territory does not give advantage to anyone. On deadlock terrain, even if our enemy offers us bait, we do not make a move. We lure him out. We retreat when half his troops are out. That is our moment. When half his troops are out, that is our moment. Of course, this is going to do that right then and there to strike. In other words, it's a very interesting comment here. He's saying what? Deadlock terrain, it's when what? Half is offered, in other words, even if our enemy offers bait, We do not move. We lure him out. We want him to come out. If he offers us bait to go in, no, 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 no. We lure him out in a way that when half his troops are out, then we strike. When half his troops are out, then we strike. In other words, and then therefore, and that is the moment of our to strike. Okay, so that's the third type. Now, next is enclosed terrain. If we occupy it first, we must block it and wait for the enemy. If he occupies it first and blocks it, do not go after him. If he does not block it, then go after him. Whoa, this is interesting. In enclosed terrain, get there first, block it. If he comes and wait for the enemy. If he's there first, he's blocking it. Don't go, don't attack. But if he does not block it, then go after him. But that's this. Wait a minute. It's going to be something funny there. Maybe maybe that is a trap. You don't know. But he's saying it's in this situation, enclosed terrain, it becomes something else in that sense. He doesn't talk about the next possibility. What happens in terrain? What are the things you do in there? He just talks about this as a general feature. On precipitous terrain, and that means danger terrain that is kind of precipitous means what? It means difficult terrain that has difficult features, or that a little dangerous, or something like that. Precipitous terrain. If we occupy it first, we should hold the Yang Heights and wait for the enemy. If the enemy occupies it first, we should go not after him, but entice him out by retreating. So therefore, if we hide, in other words, precipitous terrain is like I said, cliff faces, a mountain cliff, a mountain area. You go to the high. If you go there first, if we occupy it first, we should go to the Yang Heights, go to the high points, and wait for the enemy. Because why? You have the height advantage. He's attacking up. That's a disadvantage. Then what you wait for the enemy. If he occupies it first, don't go after him. Entice him to come out after you on ground of your choosing. Not on that. Don't attack upwards. Never do that. Now, that's the fourth. Now, the fifth. What is it? Let's count them. There's 6 types, right? He does that, right? He goes 6. Deadlock, and therefore there's precipitous. We just did this. So precipitous is what we just did. That is the fifth. And now the next one on distant terrain. That's the this is the sixth. This is the sixth of the 6. Of distant terrain, when strengths are matched, it is hard to provoke battle, and an engagement will not be advantageous. So therefore, on distant terrain that is, what is distant terrain? Distant terrain is. Let me. Yeah, it's as I thought. It means big distances. Huge gaping distances between you and the enemy. This is not. This is if when strengths are matched, and it's hard to provoke battle. This engagement is not going to be advantageous. So, big distances far away. The train is distant from each other. You don't. This is not a good strategy. Look, have that distance between this, and you can't provoke. You can't. It's hard to provoke battle in that sense. Of these 6 constitute the way of terrain. So this is the 6 things are the way of terrain. It's the general's duty to study them diligently, right? Now he starts with a general thing. He says, in war, the following are not natural calamities, but the fault of the general. And here he says, flight, impotence, decay, collapse, chaos, rout. Whoa, 6. There were 6 terrains and now 6 calamities. Wait a minute. So we talked about terrain, but now we're going to talk about calamities. Okay, let's think about this. So this is why we're going from terrain to calamity. Well, they're connected. Bad choices here will lead to these kind of things. Fighting in wars and not doing, fighting a battle on the wrong terrain in the wrong way, making the wrong choices regarding the terrain is going to lead to these kind of things, or other things you've done wrong here will lead to these things. And this is these are not natural calamities. These are the mistakes of the leader, the general's mistakes. Flight, impotence, decay, collapse, chaos, rout. Now he starts. If relative strengths are matched, but one army faces another 10 times its size, the outcome is flight. In other words, if this relative strengths are matched, but one size is 10 times the size of the other one, the troops are gonna fly. It's gonna be flight because there's no way. Because oh my God, they outnumber us. Oh my fuck, we're fucked. Oh no, oh, and morale breaks down. Don't trust you. So therefore, flight. Flight is the breakdown. Your units just run away. Breakdown of strength. When troops are strong but officers are weak. So the troops are strong but the officers are weak. The officers leading them are weak. This is impotence. Impotence. I mean, the weak officers, not weak soldiers, weak officers. When officers are strong, but troops are weak, this is the result of decay. In other words, the soldiers are lazy, they're weak, or they're not paying. In other words, that's decay. Decay. So wait a minute, let's think about this. So what is the first thing? The first thing is when your flight is when you look at the other side and it really outnumbers you, and your people just panic. Okay. And break away and run away. I don't, even if their strengths are, if relative strengths are matched, but one army faces another 10 times its size, the outcome is flight. So therefore, even if the strengths are matched, like this, the danger here is the psychological advantage of number, and also the physical advantages of number. Okay, and therefore your soldiers are just it's going to try to save themselves. When troops are strong, officers are weak. This is impotence. So this is one. I mean, the first one is kind of an outcome situation, looking at a relative thing to another. But here is about something about the character of the unit. If the officers are strong but the soldiers are weak, that is decay. When the officers are weak and the soldiers are strong, this is impotence. When superior officers are angry and insubordinate and charge in the battle out of resentment before their general can judge the likelihood of victory, then the outcome is collapse. Now, collapse is an interesting one. Collapse is that the generals up here, and then the larger unit commanders, not the local. The officers mean both the lower, like the platoon and company commanders, the battalion commanders, regimental division, and then the corps and army commander. The big leaders are the generals up here at this level, or this maybe even at the corps level, or it depends on the battle. Sometimes it's only divisions. It depends on the battle, but whoever's in charge is in charge. In the theater battle, or the theater thing, or the battle. Whoever's in charge is in charge. Then there's going to be subordinate officers, superior officers who are in charge of aspects of things, and then there's going to be the junior officers, right, who are leading the various the elements of the troop. If the officers, now he doesn't specify which type of officer. If the officers, if the troops are strong and officers are weak, so therefore the middle level of that's if these guys are weak, but the troops are strong, this is impotence. If the officers are strong and the troops are weak, that's decay. However, collapse is what? When the superior officers are angry and insubordinate. In other words, don't listen to the general's command. They're angry, they're easy to temper, and they charge in the battle out of resentment before the general can judge the likelihood of victory. Now this is collapse because there's no command, there's no control, there's no command control. The soldiers, there is a situation here where there's in that sense there's weakness at the leadership level. So that's a combination of impotence and they're not ready to attack. So forces are not going to go there. So the soldiers are like, oh my God, we're outnumbered, and they're going to fly. That's collapse. Next, when the general is weak and lacking in severity when his orders are not clear, or when his orders are not clear, and lacking in severity, comma, when his orders are not clear. So he's general's weak, and lacking in severity. In other words, he's not, rough enough, tough enough to do this, but his orders are not clear. And when neither officers nor men have fixed rules, when neither officers nor men have fixed rules, and troops are slovenly, the outcome is chaos. So what is it? There's no rules. There's no clear rules of certain behaviors. There's no rules for the officers, and there's no rules for the men. And what is it? You're not severe in your leadership, and your orders are not clear. So you combine all these things together, it's chaos. Okay. Um, and that's weakness in that sense. The chaos implies a weak general. But then again, remember that line he talked about all through this, strike with chaos? So could you feign chaos? Is there a way to make you look? Because if the unit is chaotic, that implies a weak general. But what happens if the general is not weak and this is not real chaos? See, that's the double side of this. We should think about. When a general misjudges his enemy and sends a lesser force against a larger one, a weaker contingent against a stronger one, he will fail to pick a good vanguard. The outcome is rout. In other words, he doesn't have a good vanguard. In other words, when he sends a lesser force to get a bigger force, a weaker contingent to a stronger one, this is a different influence. Not all three. In other words, he misjudges the enemy, and then he sends a lesser force for a bigger force, a weaker one to a stronger one, and fails to pick a vanguard, a good vanguard. In other words, the vanguard is the troops at the front. These have to be the best troops, the best leaders, the best things. If the vanguard is not really good, it's not effective, it's weak troops, bad troops, and they're put up front, then what is this? This is rout. So therefore, what is this? We have our six here, right? We have the things that really drive why it's bad. Um, in other words, these are the things by which a general is blamed. In other words, flight, impotence, decay, collapse, chaos, rout. And these are products of certain things. Rout is by making misjudgments of the enemy, and you said don't send the appropriate thing to fight the enemy. Chaos is when you are weak. The general is weak, and his orders are weak, and the soldiers don't know what they're doing, and the soldiers are not trained, disciplined. There's no orders. There's no rules. Everything's in chaos, right? Collapse is when subordinate, mid-level senior officers are insubordinate towards the general, don't wait for the general's moves, and then goes out to do things irrationally and ends up, leading to bad decisions. When decay is when like I said, the officers are strong but the soldiers are weak. Impotence is when um, um, uh, the officers are weak. In other words, but the troops are strong. And flight is when you are, in other words, strengths are relatively matched, but the other side outnumbers it. Now, isn't this interesting? This is flight and route are similar to each other. What is this? Route is that you send a lesser force against a larger one. Isn't that what happens with flight? If relative strengths are matched, but if one army faces another 10 times its size, the outcome is flight. So isn't this kind of like an example of a double in that sense? The two ends kind of reinforce each other, like the snake eating its tail, kind of thing. So that's and these constitute the way of defeat. So these six, if those are the way of terrain, these six are the way of defeat. And it's a general's duty to study them diligently, he says. Now, he then says the next line, which is, The form of the terrain is the soldier's ally. In other words, this is this line here. The form of the terrain is the soldier's ally. This is what he really, in other words, the terrain form is the ally of it. So, assessment of the enemy and mastery of victory, calculating the comma, semicolon. So, but notice that the first thing it's a semicolon here. The form of terrain is a soldier ally. The next one, assessment of the enemy and mastery of victory, comma, calculating the difficulty, comma, the dangers and the distance of the terrain, semicolon. These are the way of the superior general. So wait a minute. Okay. So the form of the terrain is a soldier's ally, semicolon. The next. So therefore, in other words, the form of the terrain is soldier out at that point there. Assessment of the enemy and mastery of victory. That's the next one. Calculating the difficulty, the danger, and the distance of the terrain. This is the way of the superior general. So there's three categorizations, and one is separated. One is separated. One is a stanza almost separated from it. This is it's a general statement, but I think it's tied to it because it's a semicolon. That is that doesn't mean anything. That's the English. Okay, that's not the Chinese. No semicolons in Chinese, in a sense. But this clause, Mulford wants to suggest that this clause is tied to what comes, and I think he's right there. In other words, what is this? That the first is the general is the form of the terrain is a soldier's ally, right? But assessment of the enemy, mastery of victory. That's another thing. That's general. The terrain. Okay, the terrain, that is one thing, right? The terrain, and you need to know it. The terrain is that. So that's a general thing. This is separate. This is the assessment. Assessment of the enemy and mastery of victory, calculating the difficulty, the danger, and the distance of the terrain. These are the way of the superior general. In other words, you need to know the danger, the calculating the difficulty, the danger, and the distance of the terrain. So therefore, assessing the enemy, and mastery of the means to achieve victory. These are the things that the general needs to do as well. The way of the general. He who knows this and practices it in battle will surely be victorious. Period. He who does not know it and does not practice it will surely be defeated. So therefore, you need the way of the general. You need to know these things. Assessment of the enemy, master, and know how to master victory. Calculating the difficulty, the danger, the distance of the terrain. These are the ways of the superior general. That who masters this wins, who doesn't master it will lose. And if an engagement is sure to bring victory, and let the rulers forbid it, fight. In other words, if this engagement is going to bring victory, right, but the ruler forbids it, ignore him, fight. If an engagement is sure to bring defeat, yet the ruler orders it, do not fight. What is he saying here? If it's going to be victory, fight. But wait a minute, the boss says do it. No. The boss is not there. And probably the boss may be completely incompetent. And what happens is he's not going to, if he ordered you to do it, right, and if you don't do it and you win, does he really want to give it back? He'll want to own it, so he'll forgive you. Maybe not. You never know. But your job is to make sure the general's real goal is to give his country benefit. This is the point. This is the benefit that I'm going to give benefit. In other words, I'm not here to win favor with. He's not really here to win favor with the big boy, the bosses. He's there to really do service to his country, to his the people, and the thing. And therefore, if this is going to be not work, no. If this is going to bring defeat, no. Say no. because it's going to be, because if you do it and saying I obeyed your orders, that's going to get you far. The political bosses will always want to look for, there's a saying, shit flows downhill, shit flows and credit goes up. When things go bad, they look for someone below. The big guys never get blamed. They'll blame some schmuck down there. When things go right, they take the credit. Okay, that's how this. That's why that if you are going to, it's going to be victory, and the boss says don't do it anyways. Why? That's the famous line Patton said. Eisenhower, we told you not to go, and he said, "Well, I captured this town. Do you want me to give it back?" Okay, it's hard to say. It's hard to say to them, "I'm going to give it back." It's hard to complain with success. And a defeat, there's a saying, victory has many fathers, but defeat has few parents. In other words, defeat is an orphan. No one's going to want, the political bosses who, oh yeah, I take blame for when things are bad. It's an orphan. I don't want to see it, right? And what happens here is if you make it, he orders you to do something won't work, don't lose. Why? It's not going to do anyone good. And so what? He ordered you. He's not going to want to review. You think it's going to protect you from him. If you survive, you go, I'm going to go honor and do my honor. I'm going to die. That's silly. You should. This is the okay. I've been ordered to do this, and this is my duty, my country. I'm going to now go sacrifice everything because honor demands my keeping my obligation. Sun Tzu laughs at this. Anyway, he's very Machiavellian in this, right? He's not saying no, don't. Now he's not Machiavellian in trying to get ahead. He's just saying that's silly. And I think he goes, now let's continue here. He who advances without seeking fame, he who retreats without accepting blame, he whose one aim is to protect his people and serve his Lord. This man is the jewel of the realm. And this is what his point is. The soldier, you should be in other words, you're not seeking fame. You're advancing not to seek fame and glory for yourself. You and retreat without escaping the blame. If you're retreating and you're doing it, you don't care. You take the responsibility for it. He retreats without escaping blame. He is the one. He is one whose aim is to protect his people and serve his Lord. Serve his Lord. This is the jewel of the realm. Now, this is why I think this is what I said earlier about this point is right on the mark. He regards his troops as his children, and they will go with him into the deepest ravine. He regards them as his loved ones, and they will stand by him. Unto death. They will stand by him unto death. So in other words, he regards this is very important. This jewel of the realm. He regards his troops as his children, and they will go with him into the deepest ravine. He regards them as he loved them, as loved ones, and they will stand by him until death. If he is generous but cannot command, if he's affectionate but cannot give order, if he's chaotic and cannot keep order, then his men will be like spoiled children and useless. In other words, this is the jewel of the realm is one thing, but then what is if he's generous but cannot command? So you can be generous, but you have to command. So you have to, if you're going to be generous and love your things, you have to command. That means discipline. You can be affectionate, but you cannot give orders. In other words, I can't, I just, I don't want to make orders. You can do no orders, logic, planning, reasoning, things to do. That you know what you're doing, and you're having people do what you're telling them to do. In other words, you give commands and you insist that they get done. And if they don't get done, punish them. They succeed, reward them. Punish, reward, carrot, stick, right? If he's chaotic and cannot keep order, in other words, if he cannot, if he's completely doing one thing, changing his mind, again, if he's chaotic and he cannot keep order, then what happens is men will become like spoiled children and useless. And we know that our own troops are capable of attacking, but fail to see that the enemy is not vulnerable. We have only half victory. In other words, if we know that our troops are capable of attacking, but we fail to see that the enemy is not vulnerable, this is half victory. In other words, you have to know your troops are able to do the attack and that the enemy is vulnerable. If they're not vulnerable, that's stupid. You have to think. Any way you go to this, it should be like the millstone to the egg. You should not be the millstone to the millstone. That's not going to get anywhere. That's going to be protracted. It's nothing, no victory. So has to be that. In other words, this is half the victory. If you don't know the enemy is vulnerable, not venerable. If we know the enemy is vulnerable, but to see that our own troops are incapable of attacking, we have half a victory. In other words, the whole victory is these two things: that our troops are ready and capable, and they're vulnerable. If they're vulnerable, but our troops aren't ready, that's not going to be the victory. That's going to be half a victory. Maybe not even a victory. Maybe it's not going nowhere, right? Because you only should go when you have victory. Remember that. You don't just risk it. It's not a gamble. Oh, let's go attack. Maybe we win, maybe we lose. No. You attack when you know you can win. If you don't know you can win, it's gambling. You don't gamble in this kind of thing. This is life and death, survival and not. You don't gamble. You do make some estimations, and sometimes there's going to be a situation where there's probability that you may have made a mistake. There's no escaping some level of probability error. So, but then you're saying there's gambling involved. No. Given the information you have, given the knowledge you know, given all these things, and your reliability and your assistance of and you have some confidence in their reliability. If you see advantage and you trust reliable, if you reliably sure that your enemy has a vulnerability and it's visible, and that your soldiers are capable and ready to do this, then that is the time to strike. If not, that becomes a gamble. If you're not sure, or it's not clear that they're really vulnerable. But we're strong enough, maybe they're a little weak. No. You have to know that they're weak and they're vulnerable. Again, you attack vulnerability, you don't attack strength. You avoid strength, you attack vulnerability or absence, where they're not. Okay. The wise warrior, when he moves, is never confused. When he acts, is never at a loss. In other words, he's not acting out of. In other words, when he acts, it's never at a loss. He's never going to be knowing it. He knows what is moved. He's not going to be confused. So it is said, know your enemy, know yourself, and victory. Um, um, this is that continuing here. Dun, dun, dun. Well, is never in doubt, not in 100 battles. Okay, go back here. This is one of these text shifts. And the book gets one line. It's all one nice passage. And the online, I'm sorry we're using this, but I wanted to do this, Someone says, well, I can scan this and put this on the thing, but no, I couldn't. It doesn't work well. It's ugly, and it blurs the thing. I tried looking at that, so it didn't work. So what is it saying? The wise warrior is never confused. He acts. He's never at a loss. So it is said, know the enemy, know yourself, and victory is never in doubt, not in 100 battles. Know heaven, know earth, and your victory is complete. Remember, know again, go back to the fundamentals, all the way at the beginning. Remember the five fundamentals that we talked about at the beginning of the way, the heaven, the earth, command, and discipline. Every one of these is one of those important aspects of the thing. So he said, what? If you know, let's go here. He says the wise warrior he's moved when he moves, he's never confused. So he's a command, and he acts, he never is at loss. This is command in that sense, right? That is said, he knows your enemy, know yourself, and victory is never in doubt. This again is what? This is about, I think, in many ways, the nature of command, the nature of the general making the right decision. Uh, um, command and discipline, right? Knowing things, knowing your enemy, know your troops, know that they're disciplined. Discipline deals with the true disciplines of the troops. Command is having the correct information about them, knowing you discipline, having the aspect of disciplining of the troops, having their confidence, and like this. The way again is connected with go back all the way to the beginning. This is the chapter, making one chapter one. The way is what this is the everyone's in the one mind. That everyone is confident. This aspect of this, and then we have the heaven and earth. And heaven and earth is no heaven, no earth. No heaven, the skies, the cloud, the environment, the forces of height and low, and know the earth, the terrain, the features of the terrain, those and the advantages and disadvantages of each, and what to do and how to move in what type of terrain and which is advantageous and which is not advantageous. Again, no heaven, no earth, and then victory is complete. In other words, you'll never have a doubt. The other one is that if you know yourself and know the enemy, it is said, right? Know your enemy, know yourself, and this. But then in other words, that's in quotes. That's a quote. No heaven, no earth, and your victory is complete. So the saying of know your enemy, know yourself, and victory is never in doubt, 100 battle. This is common, but he adds this. This is the next section. You need to know heaven and know earth, and that is the metaphor of knowing those things of heaven, the things of the skies, the forces of the winds, the seasons. Again, that all affects the question of the usefulness of when day, night. All these things are affects both discipline, command, and ability of and heaven and earth interconnect in a way of the Earth's territories changed based upon the terrains, our interaction of heaven and earth. So so therefore this ends the chapter. If you've again any questions, please put them below, and I will respond to them. If you again, I'm going to say this. On Ulu, my book, look for Clifford Bates, Aristotle, my Aristotle text. It is a guidebook to Aristotle. It's kind of not a commentary, but it's a kind of study guide going through the whole book of the politics. Is available. It's like 280 with a huge bibliography of all the secondary sources. It's and you got to be a college student or you're studying or doing it. This is for good for both undergraduates and graduate students. This is a very useful thing. So I'm doing Sun Soup, but I'm going to because it's available on Amazon finally. So I got the notice that was on. So I'm going to a little bit. I might even put the link on both of the link on there below. But no, we'll see what happens. Have a good day. If you like this, thumbs up. If you didn't like it, there. You can follow me on social media. You can subscribe and get continued notifications of this. You can follow me on social media below. And like I said, have a good day and see you next time. Bye bye.